Is there anything else you want to add about Clover or Chirpy or any of these dogs we're talking now? I guess anything you want to talk about their style, or if there's any funny or interesting stories or memories that come to mind when you think about those dogs?
Well, I just remember some of the first casts I ever put Chirpy in, she'd strike in there and I'd say, "Strike Chirpy." And people would look at me and they'd say, "That ain't no way, that's a female." And I said, "Oh yeah, that's her." She had a big old male dog mouth. And why in the world would a man call a dog Chirpy with a mouth like that? That's one thing I got a lot in a lot of casts with her.
I remember I hunted her one in a cast for you. I think I won the cast. It wasn't. We didn't get in a big coon train contest or nothing. But that Bill's right. You know, guys would. She would open in there, and you'd think it was some big old 80-pound male dog in there. Just you. We had. I remember them summer nights. Some people would be sleeping with the windows open. And we didn't care where we turned them dogs loose. If that thing looked coony, we was sending them, you know. It was easier to ask for forgiveness than it was for permission, you know. So we just, you know, hell, they're supposed to be sleeping, you know. So we'd turn them up in there, and then next thing you know, there's old big mouth Chirpy go roaring up in there and come swallowed up treed. There's been many nights back in the day, you know, if you talk about funny things, seen many people in their underwear we probably shouldn't have saw. You know, they'd come out on their porch yelling, or they'd be looking around out the windows, you know. But, you know, back then we was young and dumb. We didn't care, you know. We was just treeing coons, you know, having fun with it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Moving on to the next generation, you want to talk about some of the next dogs that come out of those?
Well, then I guess the next good cross would be when they crossed old Clover on Fred Bogenberg's Bernadine female. She was a big old stout female, and there again too, huge mouth and a tree dog, boy.
Old mauled.
Yep. So we ended up taking her down and bred to Clover, and out of that cross come Stylish Bull, Parsley's Stylish Bull, I guess was his
Parsley's
name.
Raging Bull.
Raging Bull. Jody Slusher had Johnson's Delta Rebel, which
Robert Johnson
balled off of Jody.
I liked old Bull, or Rebel. Rebel's a track dog, and we got to coon hunting, get hooked up with old Jody. He worked General Motors, and he'd work second shift, get hooked up with him, and I tried to buy old Rebel, and well, he just impressed me. You want to talk about one?
Now, that dog was loud.
Whew. And Jody, if anybody knows Jody, I love Jody. I really do. He's a lot of fun. I think as we got older in the hunts, we started respecting more of each other. But, you know, a lot of people, you know, Jody was a different character. He was a good dog, man. He was hard on one. He liked him, you know, but he'd talk bad about him, and they'd be like, "Jody, that's a pretty nice dog," you know. So one night we was hunting, and I said, "Jody," I said, "if you don't like him that much, if you're that disgusted with him," I said, "why don't you just sell him to me?" I said, "I'd love to have him." "Oh, you don't want this old plug?" He said, "Yeah, we'd never talk again, you know." And I said, "No," I said, "I won't hold nothing against you." I said, "I'll thank you." He said, "Well, you know, I've been thinking about selling him." And I said, "Well, how's this going to work?" And he said, "I promised him to Robert Johnson first." I said, "Okay." I said, and Robert's a good old dog, man. I had all the respect in the world for him, you know, was taught to look up to our elders and stuff. So I went to Fred's the next day, and this is kind of where it was going to go down. And I was sitting there, and Fred goes, "You really want to buy that dog?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You could do some winning with him, couldn't you?" I said, "Yeah. That dog needs to be put out there in the public eye and bred a little more." And Jody and Robert pulled up, and they was together, and I knew it was a done deal then. And I said, "What are you thinking, Jody?" He said, "Robert just bought him, you know." I said, "No problem. I wish you nothing but the best." And Robert would only take that dog down to the PKC World Hunt, got him in, doubled him up a couple times down there, and you know, rest was kind of history. Robert would breed them to his females. Robert was known to have a lot of dogs and good bitches. And a couple of the other guys, Mark McGinn, got kind of hooked up with him when Robert was getting older and got a little taste of it. You know, Bill and I had old stylish pretty girl. Bill had her there. It was a litter mate to him. Big old mouth, big stout female, but she was a little bit of a rattlehead, you know.
Yeah.
She was the type of dog that less is more with her. She looked better if you just pulled her out of the box after about sitting there for a week and a half, and she'd treat coons. If you overhunted her, she just seemed like the wheels fall off. And Bill had her and bred her. Lost that litter of pups off Schooner River Liquor.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky he didn't burn your building down and stuff.
Yep.
That heat lamp that time, and
Yep.
lost the puppies. And I don't know, somewhere along the line, I had old Stride at the time, and Ronnie and I was buying up some females. And Bill said, "I'll just sell you old girl." I said, "All right, you know." I said, "I'll just put your money in the freezer and we'll go get her." And Ron went hunting that night. And he said, "What do you got here?" I said, "Well, it's a little bit of a loose cannon here. This is kind of a gamble," but I said, "You're going to like her mouth, you know." And rest is kind of history. I made her a night champion. In 2000, I won the Ohio State Championship with her. Fred and I was coon hunting the night before, went over there and go and get a bowl of soup, check on some scores, and kind of 300-400s come in. He said, "When's the last time you hunted a girl?" I said, "About 2 weeks ago." He said, "What do you think?" I said, "You guide me?" He said, "Yeah." Fred always had some coons. And he said, "Let's bring her over tomorrow night." We scored 9 1/4, you know, and won it, you know. So, you know, she was that type of dog that looked better, you know, if you didn't hunt her much. But that was the first good cross, I think, coming off of Stylish Clover. I think there was Little Man right after that when they bred her to Stylish Thunder Girl.
I think it was, Duane.
And then, you know, there was, out of that litter was
Stylish Little Man,
Jinx. Stylish Jinx from Chris Saunders and Stylish Boss Man.
Mm-hmm.
He was a gold champion. His last owner was Bob Cooper, had him, you know, at the time, and John Bassett did a lot of winning with him. John also handled Little Man, you know, and won Lee Crawford hunt, placed in Southeastern Walker Days a bunch with him, and Walker Days, that Lee Crawford, you know, they had a knack to getting in there with him in the PKC Spring Classic, you know.
Old Tripod could tree them coons, couldn't he?
He could trim.
Called him Old Tripod, because half the time he'd run around on 3 legs from getting hurt in that back hip.
Yeah, we started putting him on that Remedil. I remember, you know, Ron Baldridge is a veterinarian around here, and him and I teamed up on them dogs, and he was one of the original owners with old Stylish Queen back in the day with Gary Breidenball. And Ronnie was busy going to vet school at the time, so Gary kind of just took the reins on her and stuff. But I'd go to them hunts. Ron always made sure I had something for them dogs if they, you know, got stoved up or sore or something. And we'd start giving them Remedil. It's an arthritis medicine, basically. He'd use that leg then, you know, especially if he put on, you know, treat a bunch or, you know, hunted a bunch hard that week, you know, it'd put him on it. But he was a good one.
He's another one that didn't probably get bred enough to either. And nobody knowed anything about frozen semen at that time, I don't believe.
You know, Junior Hale bought him. Somehow Junior ended up, I don't know the whole deal. Him and Gary was involved in him, and Junior had him when he passed. And Ron and I had Stride, and Ron was he was a great partner on dogs. You know, he never batted an eye. If I told him I needed X amount of dollars on something, he'd say, "Well, go get it," you know. And we had a conversation one evening. We was at his at his house, and we'd go over there for Sunday night dinners. And his mom was a heck of a cook, God bless her. And we'd sit there and get to talk a little business. And Ronnie's a businessman. And he said, "What do you think about trying to buy a Little Man?" I said, "What do you want to do with him?" He said, "Let's stud him out and get him bred like he should. Go get him collected or something. And take him to Columbus." He said, "I got some people down there in Columbus. We'll go fix that hip." Just kind of retiring. You know, he was a silver champion. He'd won like 8,000 grand night. So Ron made the calls to Columbus, and I think at that time it was going to cost us 3,000 or 4,000, you know, just to get that fixed. And I said, "Well, what are you thinking we ought to offer him?" You know, I said, "We don't want to embarrass nobody or whatnot." He said, "Well, go see." So we had a number in mind, and he said, "Go talk to Junior, see if we can get him." And boy, that was a hard no. You know, and the dog died there with him, and Junior had a bond with him. You know, that a lot of people don't realize that these dogs were people dogs. They wanted to please you. Mm-hmm. And I just like that type of personality in them old black and white dogs.
Yeah.
Little man ain't minded like a kid. Junior and Bassett had spent a lot of time with that dog, and they'd get him out them hunts, never put a lead strap on him.
Nope.
Talk to him just like a kid. Little man, go get in that truck.
Yep.
And he'd just go right over and hop up in that truck. And it was really something to see.
Stride was like that too, you know, and those and that goes to credit to John. John did that. He put that handle on them dogs. As wild as Stride was, you could absolutely go in there, shoot a coon out, and you tell him to sit. No lead strap. You just say sit there. And you could fool with a coon with another pup. And he'd just sit there and watch you and never say a word. And you could walk that pup out and say, come on, boy, let's go. And he'd walk right beside you, and you could turn your light on across the field and show him the truck. Say, go get in that truck. And every time he'd be standing on tailgate waiting on you when you got there. You know, and I ain't taking no credit for that. That come from John Bassett. You know, John was a good dog man back in the day, and spent a lot of time with them dogs. You know, for sure. A lot of worn out boots. You weren't driving across them fields. You know, for the most part, anyways. You know, you had to go round them up.
Yeah.
And like I said, no GPS, so you was just in an area with the old beep beeps. You know, you got to learn how to read them pretty good. And it'd get you in that general vicinity.
Yeah.
You know, for sure.
We could get over there where you could at least hear them.
Right. Exactly.
Another thing back to these pups, I mean, I think a guy ought to have a good handle on a pup before you try to get real serious about hunting. When they should know their name, they should have an idea what it means to be on a lead strap, what it means to be tied while you're trying to work them with a coon. I think a lot of guys just start taking them to the woods, and all that is taken for granted. And then while you're trying to teach that pup what's going on around that tree with that coon, and you go tie him that first time, he's got himself all knotted up in a knot in that strap because he's never been tied.
Yeah.
You take away all what you're trying to do good, gets canceled out because that pup is so confused about what's going on. What am I doing here? Why is these things got my legs all knotted up?
Absolutely. I agree with Bill. You know, I lived in town, excuse me, I lived in town when I got married, and I had a fenced-in backyard, and I could see the change then if I had a pup around there. I could sit on the back porch, and that bond, that interaction, you got to have that bond with them dogs. That starts right then and there. And then when I moved to where I live now, I was blessed to be back off the road, hundreds of acres of timber, and I got to letting them pups run loose and socializing, and it mentally matures them quicker than raising them in a pen like a chicken. You can't just throw food at them and walk away and think that that's going to work. It might work for some people in some situations, and not everyone's got the opportunity to live off the road someplace and let a pup run loose and let it free range. And I got some neighbors back in there, and they got used to it, you know. And I'd apologize to them, say, hey, you know, send them back home. You know, they're supposed to be over here on the other side, you know. And it just helps them. You know, Bill's got a great setup here to do exactly what I was saying. It just, you can see there's a big difference in a pup that was raised in a pen, not shown attention, or one that's running loose, interacting with nature, and you just putting your own handle on them at that time. You know, you got to spend time with them. It's like a kid. You get out of them what you put into it, you know. If you don't mess with them enough, you know, you're going to go to the cops, and you're going to go to the cop station and get them out, you know. But they're a lot of fun. I didn't have all the patience for it when I was younger. As I got older, I enjoyed working with them.
So is that kind of, we can transition to pup training more. Do you just let them run loose in the very beginning? Other, like, I'm talking like puppy, like once they're away from their mom, you just let them loose and kind of develop on their own for the first few months?
Since I've moved here, we live way back off the road, and I let them pups run until they get to where they're running stuff out in the woods and around me living right here. I used to try to walk them pups around and try to start them on squirrels, but then down the road you have to break that dog off of that squirrel, right? So here, I kill every squirrel I see in this yard. I don't want them pups even seeing a squirrel. Because you're just going to have to break them off of it later. And when they're out in that woods every day running for a couple hours, running rabbits and stuff, it's time to start penning them up. Try to start focusing on the coons.
Yeah.
You take a pup and he's running deer. Chuck told me this a long time ago. You take a dog that's running deer, he's running fox, he's treeing possums, and he's treeing coons. That dog's only spending 25% of his time coon hunting.
Yeah.
He's spending 75% of his time doing shit he's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
And take that into what Charlie said back then. That's part of the reason why when we bred Chirpy, we went to the Logan's Wild Clover, because them dogs were naturally straight. They were known not to run much junk.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted that put in because Chirpy was a handful when she was young. She would run anything that would lay a trap.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted that line of dogs for that reason. We wanted to get away from all that time spent trying to break them dogs off stuff they weren't supposed to be running.
Yeah.
So when you take that in consideration, that's why around the house here I don't like to let them get started, make a bad habit of running rabbits, barking at squirrels. It pays off big dividends down the road.
Yeah.
And you really wouldn't realize that unless you had a place like Duane had back in that woods, and what a difference that makes if you put a handle on that when they're little.
Absolutely. You know, Bill's got a little water here behind his house, and then pups get used to, you know, swimming and getting in that kind of stuff. I've got the same kind of setup. You know, it's just, I don't know. I'm a firm believer, you know, if you can, I'd go buy a pair of pups or raise a litter. I'd keep 2 here, and it's just easier to maintain and handle them 2 pups and letting them venture off. And I'm like Bill, you know, when you start hearing them, when you got to put a tracking collar on them to let them run loose, it's time to start penning them up, because they're going to get into something that you're not needing them to be involved in.
Yeah.
You're just asking for more problems down the road. And a lot with these dogs, you know, these black and white dogs, and you know, little Clover bred dogs, whitey bred dogs, they, from my experience back in the day, messing with them, you needed to focus on correcting one problem at a time for them to stay in their right mind, because these things was geared a little different than what we was used to having back as kids, you know, and them dogs taught us a lot about coon hunting. We, you know, it was changing. It was a new era for us, and like I said earlier, you know, we was blessed to be around, you know, just the magnitude of good hounds. You know, Chuck was helping Gary breeding Queen, and you know, they bred her to old Hardwood Bozo once, and out of that came Hardwood Patch. There was a dog called Stylish Boz that got in the Final Four of the PKC World Hunt. Was a really nice dog. Too bad he was sterile and didn't know it, because you know, that dog probably would have threw something. You know, it'd have been interesting to see what he threw. And then there was old Stylish Dolly and Stylish Molly. You know, Dolly was the AKC World Champion. Molly won the Pro Tour. You know, whatever they was breeding was just reproducing. And we, like I said, we was in a different era of dogs. We had to have some of it. We wanted to be involved in it. And but you know, with each one of them dogs and those crosses and the whitey stuff, you was better off correcting one problem or focusing on one goal with them dogs. It just confused them if you did too much with them.
Absolutely.
So you had to choose what you couldn't live with that particular time when you was hunting. Am I right, Bill?
Absolutely. And you had to have the right temperament. I never had the right temperament to handle that shocking collar, because I probably ruined more dogs than I helped with that. Because it only takes one time to make a bad correction that dog will never forget.
No.
And you'll put that little, whatever you want to call it, queer streak or something in him.
will haunt you forever.
Oh, you can do a lot of
Yeah.
harm
Yeah.
with a shock and collar in the wrong hands, right? And you can do a lot of good in the hands of somebody that's got the right mentality to handle it, right? So I try not to use that shocker too much unless I know, even like running junk. I don't like to shock them dogs for running something unless I see it.
Yeah.
Because there's been times when I'm thinking, man, I'm just about ready to push that button, that dog would roll up tree, and I'm thinking, whew, another 30 seconds, it was about to get the juice. And I thought, man, you just need to keep your hands off that shocker, Bill.
And as I agree with Bill a lot on that. And as far as like when training these young dogs off this line, what I started doing was I would give them X amount of time. They're out there trailing. When is enough? To try to get them to move on, to teach them how to skip off them tracks. I'd give them, depending on what time of year it was. Let's say summertime, they get caught up out in a 100-acre cornfield or a bean field. Yeah, I really didn't want to go in there and try to track them down, but I'd give them 20, 30 minutes. If they can't come out of there, it's time for me to go help them. Some people would go in there, shock them out. They'd just go into hiding, just lay down out in them bean fields, and
How
they
we go
didn't know
through
what
there like we was trying to herd deer out of the damn woods. We had 4 guys go through that woods, and we'd all be screaming, hollering, get, and try and run them out of there.
Right. So you just had to kind of encourage them a little bit. You give them 20 minutes, whatnot. We'd start screaming and squalling, and somebody had their windows open. They're probably thinking, what in God's green earth's going on out there? But we was moving them on. You spend enough time on this one, go find a coon track that you can run, that you're comfortable with. So it's just all the little stuff that, they was naturals at what they did, but you kind of had to help push them along to finish them into what we liked.
Yeah. I guess, is there a time of year that you've noticed they really shine more than others? Is it probably colder weather? Kind of like what you were saying?
Fall,
Fall.
spring.
Fall and spring.
Yep. And I'm not trying to say nothing bad about other breeds or whatnot, but I liked September, end of September, October, November, up till spring. And when it started greening up and farmers' crops were starting to crop up, it was time to maybe go pull the boat out and go fishing or do something like that, because when we knew what we was going to get into, and it didn't bother them dogs. We experimented with the treadmills, keeping them in shape, rode them with the 4-wheelers or the truck. Sometimes that, did more for them at that time of year. You didn't have to hunt the guts out of them. Versus, for example, when Rat Attack got real hot in the world, and everybody knows what he put down. He put tree dogs down. Them boys would pull them dogs out, and you're looking up 6, 7 trees in a cast, and maybe looking at 3 or 4 coons at most. And no, don't get me wrong, they all weren't like that. There was a lot of good ones off of him too. But that kind of blew these dogs' mind. When they was making them trees, and we touched on that earlier. So we could just put them back and maybe go do stuff with the family, take a vacation. We all had kids growing up, then, and spend time with them and enjoy that, because God knows that goes by pretty quick too.
Yeah. Generation we just talked about, you said it was Delta Rebel and them. Do you want to kind of transition to the, I guess, like what era was that? Like what, was that early 90s?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you want to move, I guess, later on into the 90s, kind of the next generation after that?
Well, you started getting into Little Man and hunting offspring of his, and that's when I started hunting stride a lot. And like I said, he was crazy wild. We bred him and advertised him, and Ronnie and I did, and he was them type of dogs. Like for him, for example, if a female wasn't just right, and they'd come to your house, they wouldn't just jump on them. They had to be ready, and you was gonna get pups. What we started seeing, we was trying to do a lot of line breeding at the time, and we was, not only was we getting the good stuff, but we started getting some of the bad stuff too that we didn't want. So that's when I started noticing maybe a guy ought to breed something off a rat attack, or maybe a little Sackett Junior in there. Throw a little clean the tree dog up. Them dogs would grab some vines in there and clean the tree dog up on them. And I remember, Chuck got, that was probably Chuck's concern. He liked to listen to a good clean tree dog, and we had old Hayes, at the time. Stylish Hayes was hot, and Chuck was a big part of that with Jimmy Guess, and they liked listening to that certain style tree dog versus what Bill and I would settle for, I guess, what come with it, because we wanted to have coons in them trees. And
we were so happy with a 60-minute bark tree dog, where Chuck and them was wanting that 120 bark minute tree dog. But
you had to start breeding some of that into these dogs to clean it up. You started getting more duck-footed dogs. The conformation was leaving a little bit, and it just kind of jogged my memory as I'm sitting here a little bit thinking, and I'm probably letting off base a little bit, but I want to talk about a female that was directly off of Whitey that never had a title in this world, never was put in the hunts. I handled her in one hunt for him, but old Bodenberg's fish, that was off of his females and stuff, old Wiggly, and old Tom again female. And I'm kind of getting off base here a little bit, but that female is now in the PKC Hall of Fame for her reproduction. That's how much Whitey done, he played a big part in a lot of this stuff. And I do see a lot of these dogs nowadays, he may be way back in that pedigree, but I look at those pedigrees and I can't help but think I know where this is coming from. And Bill sees it in some of his dogs. That stuff's coming from way down in the roots. I used to always say, why breed to the branches when you can breed to the stump? And it kind of, she was an outstanding female in her own right. I mean, she'd treat coons. I tried to buy her one night, Fred had her and a litter mate. They went in there and caught a coon on the ground. It wasn't long. I mean, Fred said, fish won't stay there. She was going up in that next section treating that coon. And Fred's a good friend of mine. And I said, Fred, how much you take for that dog tonight? And actually, Bill put me on to her. Bill said, you need to go hunt with Fred. He's got a for real bitch over there. He said, if you can get her bought. He said, but you know how they are. They're born at Fred's house. They'll die there at Fred's house. And those are his kids,
Yeah.
and God love him, and I went down, we went hunting that night. And I don't know if Fred and I hunted a bunch. And I just said, Fred, we was walking back up the truck. I said, I'm going to ask you, would you sell that dog? And he said, I don't think I could, Duane. I said, well, I didn't ask you if you could. I said, will you? And we got up there on walking to the road, and I remember it like it was yesterday, and I said, what would it take to buy this dog? She was just a puppy. I said, $2,500, and I had a whole pocket full of cash that night, and I was bound determined I was coming home with her. He said, that wouldn't touch it. I said, well, then how much would it? $3,000? No. So I thought, well, Fred likes money, so, and I do too, and I don't like getting rid of it, but I thought, I'm going to own this dog here. So I said, would Ford do it? No. So we got up to the road, and I said, Fred, I'm going to make you another offer here on old fish. I said, we can work this out any way you want. I said, would you take $5,000 for her? And he said, I'm just going to keep her, Duane. I thank you for the offer. So I always kind of hung around, and I had some dogs off old fish, and Fred come over and bred a female. He bred old fish to stride and different things. That's where we got old Gatorade and all them, and so I respect that he kept her till he died, and he used her in some of our stuff, because Fred could have took her anywhere he wanted to, but he come over and he believed in the black and white stuff too. But he also knew that we had to throw a little bit something different in there to mix it up, to get it to blend real good. I guess that's where I was going with that story. But and it's been successful for Fred.
Yeah, I wish he would do one of these, but every time I ask him to get on here, he's not interested in.
You ain't gonna get Fred to do it,
Well, that's the problem when you get to be our age.
Yeah.
Clayton, you'll find that out when you get there. But
and Fred's
it's hard to remember stuff that happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
For me, last week,
Yeah.
Well, and to be honest with you, I've been working a bunch, and Fred and I don't see each other or text much like we used to in the past. And he reached out to me the other week, and he said, "Hey," he said, "these fellas wanting to hear the story about old Whitey." He said, "they're trying to get Bill to do it, and they're trying to put the right people together to do this." And I said, "Oh, Fred," I said, "I'm an old has-been." I said, he said, "No," but he said, "You and Bill, you spent lots of nights together." He said, "You two need to tell the story." And I said, "There's somebody else probably tell the story a little better, And not that I was kind of blowing him off or nothing. Like I said, I respect him and stuff. And it wasn't long then. I'm at work, and I work at the local high school, and I was cleaning the bathrooms, and I get this text pops in, and it's Bill. And I said, "Oh, Fred's reached out and got this going now, And Bill says, "Hey," he said, "you get a minute?" He said, "Could you give me a call?" I said, "I'll call you soon." I said, "I talked with Fred." So it was good, that we got this all put together, telling a little story about it all, and I'm sure we missed a bunch, but I'm glad Fred put it together, and I heard Burchel was involved in it. And Burchel's another good guy, having a lot of success with Frog, and we can touch a little bit on that. He's, there's Whitey in that top and bottom in there, and I've always been, and I like a good bitch line, and I ain't trying to take nothing away from Phrogger's daddy, but he was passed around and bred, and he really wasn't throwing nothing. And I'm a firm believer that what's happening with the Phrogger phenomenon, what's going on here, I really do believe it's not, and like I said, I'm not trying to say nothing bad about Spinal Tap. I think it's, if you look deeper down in that pedigree, I think that's where it's really coming from. Phrogger's mother was a hell of a bitch, she coon trier. And I think a lot of that's coming from that Clover stuff back in there. He don't look like no Clover dog. He looks a little more like Flair, like his mom, and stuff. But it's he doesn't look like Spinal Tap. So I think it's coming back from another gene in there, and I'm truly happy that for Burchel and all the success that he's had, they don't make him no better than Burchel. He's a good dude. I've got all the respect in the world. I got to know him back in the day when we was hunting the black and white dogs, and he was hunting English dogs. God forbid, he I won't hold nothing against him. He was hunting the old swamp rooster stuff, and his dad was big in them English dogs, but he finally seen the light, and come over here to the other side. So I got to give him a little dig there. He's a good dude. He's a good dude.
Clayton, while you're talking, we probably ought to bring up another little dog that was kind of special to me and to a lot of people, really, and her name was Jukebox Maudie.
Oh, yeah.
She come from Junior Jackson.
We had all three of them that summer. Oil Can Harry and Handsome Harry and Oil Can Harry.
Junior got in a bad car wreck, was going to be in a bad way for a while, and he called and said, "Man, Bill, I got 3 dogs down in here. I'd like to go partners with you on him because I'm not going to be able to hunt for quite a while." So we went up there and got old Jukebox Loud, I believe he called him.
That's what it was. Jukebox Loud, Handsome Harry.
Oil Can
Harry.
And Jukebox Maudie.
Yeah, she was fun.
Yeah, old Maudie, when we brought her home, she had like hip dysplasia, I'm going to say is what it was. She would hop like a rabbit in her back end, and I'd let her run around the turkey farm there, and she would she just wouldn't leave the yard. She'd just lay on that porch. So I started giving her some calcium pills. By God, in about 3 weeks after giving her them calcium pills, a neighbor called up one day and said, "Hey, there's a dog down here, coon dog down here, got one of my house cats treed." Went down and it was old Maudie, and then we started coon hunting old Maudie. She was a ball to hunt. I can't tell you how many coons that little dog treed in less than a minute.
We had a lot of fun.
Oh, she was.
I hated to see her go.
Oh yeah, she could run a track. There was a track to be run. She could run it and get it treed, or she could pop them coons up along the face of that woods like we talked about earlier.
Treat them like popcorn.
Yeah. Junior and what's the guy's name? Had the restaurants down there, was hooked up with Junior. Man, I hate
Leon Childers.
Leon Childers. They ended up buying my half out on that little dog, and they've done a lot of winning with old Maudie.
Yeah.
But she was a different style dog than what I'm used to, and so was Oil Can Harry and Loud. They were different style dogs than what I was used to. But it was a welcome change because man, they could really treat them.
It was welcome. Bill's right on. It was a welcome change. We spent a lot of time that summer, like I said, hunting them three. And I didn't have nothing involved in them, I just liked listening to them, and it was a lot of fun, and it kind of gave us a break from what we was dealing with, And I think it was kind of like you want to say, just recharged our batteries and had some fun with something that was totally different than what we was used to messing with.
Yeah. Here's a funny story, and you may have to edit this out, but I remember one of the first coons that Oil Can Harry treed, and me and Duane. And that dog treed behind a man's house trailer.
I can tell you right where it was.
It's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's like one of the first coons he treed. I packed that rifle in there, and Duane said, "Man, you're right up behind that house trailer." I said, "I'll be back." I went in there and I get to trying to shoot that coon out to that dog.
Billy never was known to be a good shot here for a while.
And it didn't take very long. That man stepped out of that house trailer and he emptied a 9mm pistol.
And you're going to laugh about this. I'm sitting down the road, okay, and not to interrupt your part of the story, but Bill comes running up the road, and I still hear Harry back in their tree, and this man's just unloaded this pistol on this deck. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm out of bullets." I said, "Well, goddamn!" I said, "This man's shooting at you." He said, "But I'm gonna kill that coon." He said, "You got any more bullets?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "You didn't think about just walking off that tree?" He said, "I'm killing that coon." And this man's out there screaming, thinking Bill's still out there, and he's at the truck getting more bullets. Next thing you know, I hear Bill down in there, pop, pop, pop. And all of a sudden, I hear this 9 go off again, pop, 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 pow. And I thought, well, I don't know what's going to happen here, but we're going to see. Here come old Bill. He comes walking up. And I said, "You get it done?" He said, "Finally." I said, "Well, good." I said, "I hope that man sleeps good the rest of the night." But I highly doubt he did. But that was a true story too. True story.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of adventures like that.
Oh my gosh. I tell another one where one night, you want to tell some stories, about Bill and I going back. No, Stylish Dolly, she was a wood gyp. Now, she may treat 20 coons in a row, but she may treat 20 blanks just as quick. But damn, she sounded good doing it. So we're down on the river one night, and lo and behold, she's got a coon. Bill says, "I'm going to shoot that coon out." I said, "All right." He said, "I'll stay right down in here." He said, "You go out there in the field." I said, "All right." I said, "I'll shoot it out." I shoot this coon out, and all of a sudden I hear boom, big thud, and boom, all this noise going on. And I said, "My God, what the hell just happened?" I go down there, and that coon come down, hit Bill right on the shoulder, knocked him down. He rolled down that bank. He was laying down in this ravine, just knocked the air out of him.
I mean, the shoulder hit me right in the eyeball. That coon's nose hit me right in the eye.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's Bill down in there with Dolly. They're all fighting this coon together. I didn't know who was chewing on it the most, and all just Bill down in there squalling. So, we've had a lot of good times with these old dogs for sure.
Any other stories like that? That's I kind of want to transition into more just stories kind of like that over the years.
Well, there was another night, me and Duane and his dad, and I believe a fellow by the name of Jeff Bentley was together down along a river section, and we shot this coon out. Duane's dad had stayed back at the truck. Well, that coon no more hits the ground. There's 3 dogs fighting it. I look up and I see a light coming up through that woods. I said, "Somebody's coming." Everybody grabbed their dogs and took off running, but Jeff, he went to run and forgot to grab his dog.
Yeah.
He had to run back and get his dog, but it ended up being Duane's dad come down in there and look.
Scared the dog crap out of us, didn't he? I got another one. We was over hunting with this dog trader over in Indiana, and he was buck wild. This guy was crazy, and he had some good hunting, and we'd laugh, and we'd go over there. We didn't even buy no Indiana hunting license. We'd just go there, and he'd say, "You don't need them," Off we go. We'd tree a bunch of coons. And
teenagers.
With teenagers. And we just barely had enough gas money, enough to eat and pack a little cooler around Mom and Dad's refrigerator, get some drinks, you know. We'd go over there, and dog got treed. And it didn't matter what time of year it was. If it was up in the air, that old man was shooting it. And we was over in there, and all of a sudden he said, hey, we got to go, we got lights coming, you know. So he sends Bill and I on a wild goose. He said, you guys go over this way, and I'll meet you on this next stone road. So this guy's getting close, and we're on our hands and knees. You know, I don't know why we was on our hands and knees. We thought we was going to get down in the dang bushes, I guess, and
we tried to sneak out
of there. And all of a sudden, we're just going, and I was just a little bit lower than Bill at the time, and all of a sudden, I'm like, didn't even, all of a sudden, it was just like somebody had shot him. I turned around, and I said, what the heck's going on? He said, God, I just got shocked. I said, shocked? I said, what, by what? There was this electric fence around this lot, and I crawled right underneath it, never even saw it. We was, didn't have no lights on, and it got Bill right across the chin, and I like to laid him out, and it burnt. We laughed about that. He had this big old red mark right across his chin. It just laid him back like somebody had shot him. Oh my Lord! Yeah, we still that was interesting for sure. Yeah.
Oh, there's thousands more I could tell, but we better save that for another day.
Yeah. You'll be needing to do a part 2, won't you?
Yeah. If you want to, any other time, we can.
No, it's been a blast. I've truly enjoyed you reaching out, and Bill and Fred and all of them. I'm going to lie, I was a little nervous about doing it all myself, but I've had a great time doing this with you, Clayton. I appreciate what you're doing with the Coon Dog world, and the memories and the friends that I've made across the country traveling. Bill used to always tell me, you don't want to draw Duane at them hunts. He said, he'll be your buddy, we'll drink beer, we'll go have fun. But man, when that clock's on for 2 hours, I didn't care who was in that cast. I was wanting to win, and them people knew that I was hard on them boys around here. And some of them was like, how we going to do this? But, and it was all done. We was all good. Let's go tree coons,
Junior Jackson always said it the best. He said, you cannot judge a man in 2 hours while he's competing.
That's right.
Not judge a man's character.
That's right.
In 2 hours when a man's competing.
That's right. I agree with that. No, that was a good statement right there, But, when we done this back in the day, our families, man, they was on back in the second burner, They just should have done a few things right, but we didn't, at the time. That's all we knew, that's all we knew was to turn them dogs loose. And I'm glad, most people would die to have the opportunity to follow the dogs that we did, and God blessed us with just some great dogs. And hey, they all didn't make it, don't get me wrong. We went through a lot of them, but it's just what it is. It's when you're set the bar so high, and we was blessed and knowing what we liked. There wasn't no market for a $500 dog. Those days was gone. So.
You got any more stories?
Oh, I got a lot of stories.
Well,
I tell you, back in the day, what kind of set right before the old Whitey days, and I don't know if this is even going to make the airwaves or not, but there was a dog back in the day called Ohio Brush. He was a night champion dog. He was just no coon treer, and them boys, Bill Girding and Ron Avish, old hippie, he's passed away now. They was hard on them coons. They was hard on them, and them boys hunted every night, and we aggravated the hell out of them guys. And probably seen some stuff we shouldn't have saw back in the day running there with them boys, but we got introduced to cigarettes, chewing tobacco, and everything else, but hell, we wanted to be part of the clique, So we'd follow them around. They'd pick us up, and Ron's brother, Norm, which I've got recently reacquainted with, is a super nice guy, and he had an old Finley River bred female called Judy, and Brother and Dad bought me a pup. And that was one of my first pups. we didn't have kennels then. We just tie them out on chains in a doghouse. And we went down to the lake that weekend and come home Sunday evening. She was laying out there along the road dead. She broke the chain. But we, that kind of, back then, that we wanted to be like them guys, or I did anyways. Them boys was going to them hunts, and they made him a night champion and sold him to, I can't remember, a veterinarian up in Michigan. And he lost him in a swamp or something. He was treated for a couple of days or something, lost his voice, but they ended up with him back. And, he put some decent stuff on the ground back in the day. Kind of, them dogs taught us a little bit too. But nothing like the old Whitey era, though. 90s was good to us.
Is there anything else you want to say about Whitey or any of the other dogs? Is there any dogs that we should talk about that we haven't talked about?
Oh, I'm sure there is, Clayton.
I'm sure we missed some, and if we did, it wasn't by, we didn't do it intentionally.
Yeah.
I want people to know that, we didn't miss nothing. There was a lot of good ones in there, and I'm sure I'll drive home here tonight and think about it and say, oh boy, we missed old so-and-so. So if we did, it wasn't done intentionally, and I apologize, ahead of time. But
we probably should mention that cross on Old Queen and Old Stylish Jukebox, the Jackson Boys Jukebox.
Yeah.
That was a good cross,
that
too.
was a good cross,
Yeah.
too. That was...
I believe Old Box, the one I had, ended up being
he got the final,
fourth place of the world UKC World Hunt, was it? Junior, he placed second with his,
PKC World Hunt.
PKC
he
World
was sterile.
Hunt.
He was sterile.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story about that one night. Old Box was just an old... Jukebox was a good old coon terrier. And it took some convincing to get Gary to breed old Queen to Jukebox. I don't think he was on board at first, but Jukebox to these dogs, like old Bill's old box dog, was just an old stout, droopy-eyed thing, and he was we was hunting one night, me and Bill and John, and they was started, and we always had snacks in the truck, and Bill couldn't understand why old Box wasn't doing nothing. And,
He's out trailing.
and wasn't doing, well, no, John's was trailing. Bill had no idea John was over here feeding crackers to old Box on the other side of the truck. We was sitting on the boy, old Bill was like, where the heck's mine at, Wonder why he ain't in there doing much. John's over there just laughing. He's feeding him crackers and stuff over there. He'd check back in or something, and he was over there and I'd laugh. But, just, we all did it in fun, We took it serious, and, but old Box went on to make a good one. Martin Spears had him down there in Mississippi and got in the finals of the UKC World Hunt, and then Junior got in the finals of the PKC World Hunt with his.
Both them dogs had good mouths, good come-get-me locates.
Sure enough.
Yeah, that was a good cross on Old Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Queen done her part. She was the foundation. Without Queen, we couldn't have had Whitey, because we got Chirpy off of Queen and Lipper, and then, Chuck and Bill there went and bred to Wild Clover. So, you gotta have good bones. And sure enough, we was truly blessed to capitalize on it, and other people around the world, Ed Yates come up and bought a slew of them. He'd bring that camper up here and stay with Kurt. He had old Hideaway Magnum Mike then, he thought Mike was the best thing since sliced bread, and he got to seeing some of this other stuff, and, he started spending some of that money there, started scooping them up, he was helping us all out back in the day. For sure.
Clayton Stark here, getting ready to take the dogs to the woods tonight using the Dogtra Pathfinder 2 GPS tracking system.
I don't